In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the Leuchtturm 1917 120g edition notebook. I'll go over the specs, I'll do a paper test, and I'll tell you what I like and don't like about this notebook coming up. Blake here with Blake's Broadcast. On this channel, I review fountain pens, paper, and ink, and as always, I put links in the show notes in the description below. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, it really helps out my channel. Alright, let's get on with the review. So, this is the Leuchtturm 1917 edition 120G. This has 120 gram paper, which is why it's called edition 120G. This was recommended to me by a couple of viewers, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. This notebook, basically the big selling point is that it has very thick paper. A lot of people have complained about the paper not being fountain pen friendly in the regular classic hardcover notebook. The A5 size, like this one, came with 80G paper, and I thought this paper actually was pretty good, but I got a lot of feedback saying, hey, this paper isn't performing like you showed. So I really think that there's batch variation, and I maybe got lucky. I've had a couple of these, and I haven't had any huge issues, but the paper certainly could have been more fountain pen friendly. So anyway, here we are. This is the 120G edition. So pointing out some of the differences here, unlike the Notebook Classic, or the classic hardcover, this only comes in A5 size, and it comes in 4 colors. It comes in a dot grid, blank, and ruled, whereas with the classic hardcover you get way more sizes, way more colors, and I think you have more ruling than those 3 options also. Other big differences, this has 103 pages versus, I think this is like 151 pages. So those are pretty big differences. It's also a lot thicker, even though we have like 50 less pages. It's also quite a heavy notebook. I'll weigh it later, but this is a big, chunky A5 size notebook. So looking here, we have low transparency paper. You're going to have less show through. Ghosting actually was a big problem for sure on that 80 GSM Leuchtturm. We have paginated numbers again, so each page has its own number. Paper's acid free. This paper they say is made in Germany. I don't believe they say the origin of their classic notebook paper, so maybe because they're calling that out, this will also be more consistent than that 80G paper, hopefully. We have 2 bookmarks, we have a table of contents, which is quite nice, and then we have a paper pocket. Written or drawn content retains its contours, it does not shine through. Developed by Leuchtturm 1917 and made in Germany. 120 gram paper, has a smooth surface with low transparency, making it versatile and suited for use with fountain pens, brush pens, and markers. And it's made in Taiwan. Okay, so let's take this thing off here. They really do a lot with their packaging here. They're saying thank you for choosing the notebook. So many other languages. Okay, and now on the inside, like with the original, we have a lot of junk. There's a club that you can join, apparently. Another thank you with the signatures for the, I don't know, developers. And yeah, so okay, I think the difference is with that notebook, or with the classic version, you get options of a soft cover, hard cover, but you also get squared or a grid, which you do not get with this notebook. And of course you get all of these other sizes, where with 120G edition you only get the medium A5 size. Okay, a lot there. On the paste down, end papers here, so features 120 gram paper developed by Leuchtturm, made in Germany. They're really putting a lot of effort into letting us know what kind of paper this is. So we got a place for your name, format, information here, so standard A5 size. Then we have this very nice table of contents, which I like, blank page, and then we go right into the paginated numbers. Now in the back, we have stickers. You can use these on the cover. These would be for the spine. And then we have a expanding paper pocket here, Leuchtturm 1917. And that is pretty much it. We have 2 nice bookmarks here. They match the cover pretty nicely. I like that we have a striped one and a solid one. Very nice. as always with Leuchtturm. In terms of the binding, so by my count we have 15 or 16 signatures in here, which would give us a 16-page signature. Very good, very nice binding. You can't really get too far with it. Ooh, it's getting scary. Because it's so thick, you do definitely get a good amount of resistance from this, but it is putting up with it. It's a good quality stitched binding, but because it is so thick, it's a little bit harder to fold over than that older one. Now, let's go to the paper performance. So looking here, the face of this looks pretty good. I don't see really any feathering. We do see some of the texture of the paper coming through a bit in some of the pens here, but nothing bad here. The face looks really good, so definitely happy with that. Now on the back, and I'm going to take this out because this is annoying. It looks pretty good. You know, you can see a little bit of that pilot parallel is coming through just ever so slightly, really minor. A little bit from the Hakase, I mean, it's just barely coming through. So really not a lot here. This Namiki Yukari Royale came through in a spot. The Diamine Bloody Absinthe. You gotta try pretty hard. Even look at the Stettler Lumo Color permanent marker, almost nothing. 1 or 2 dots here. Pilot oil drawing pen didn't really come through. Sharpie came through a little bit. Copic came through a little bit. Pretty impressive. So I would say for most pens, this is actually pretty safe paper. Is it the best for fountain pens? No, but it's very good for fountain pens, and I definitely think it's very fountain pen friendly, more so than the other one, the other 80 GSM one. So if we look here, you know, face-wise, I would say pretty similar, but once we turn the page over, wow, what a difference. There's so much show through in this where you don't get that here quite nearly as much. Oh, one other thing that I did notice and did really like is that if you look at the dot grid in this classic one, it is super dark. I don't know, they chose like a black, almost a black dot, whereas on this, much more subtle gray, much less intrusive than on the original one. So that was definitely a big noticeable difference for me. Now, just playing around a little bit here, very minimal show through, so really excellent. Now, as a comparison, just to plug my own notebooks a little bit, this is 80 GSM blocker paper. This is my blocker paper notebook for the Paper Mind, and this is the 120-gram paper. I think this is pretty impressive performance here. This is good, but this is even more impressive because it's the same weight paper as this. It's crazy. Look at how much you can see through. Barely anything. So anyway, what I want to do now is I want to weigh these because this is heavy. So 468 grams. So it's only about 60 grams more than the main one. And I guess both of these are relatively heavy. This just to me just feels really heavy. Now, as a comparison, this is a semicolon hardcover A5 notebook. This has less pages, but it has, you know, thicker, I think this is maybe 90 GSM, something like that, 364. So actually both Leuchtturms are pretty heavy, but just when I picked this up for the first time, I was like, wow, this is quite chunky. So what are my pros and cons for the Leuchtturm 1917 120G edition notebook? The biggest pro is definitely that 120-gram German-made paper. It holds fountain pen ink really nicely. You can go pretty much as wet and as wide as you want, and you won't have issues with bleeding and feathering. Now, maybe if you use some crazy inks, you might see some of that, but in my testing, I had no problems with fountain pens. It's a very nice paper to write on. And, of course, you get all those really nice Leuchtturm features, you know, the elastic strap, the 2 bookmarks, the paper pocket in the back, you get the numbered pages, you get the stickers for labeling, you get the index in the front. Just a very nice package. Compared to the regular hardcover with the normal paper, you know, this is only, I think, $3 more, $25 versus $22. It's definitely worth it, especially if you had a problem with the paper in the old one. I also like that the dot grid in this is lighter in color than on the classic one. I think that is an improvement, less distracting. Now in terms of cons, well, this comes in less formats for one, a lot less formats, which was one of the biggest strengths of the classic Leuchtturm notebook, so that is definitely a downside. The other thing is it's big, so this is the original one and this is the 120G one. It's a lot fatter and it's noticeably heavy, and the old one was already kind of pretty heavy. And instead of 151 pages like you got on the old one, you have, I think it's 203 pages in this one. So that's a pretty big difference in terms of pages, but that's still a lot of pages. This is actually probably the heaviest A5 notebook I have in my collection. You know, carrying this around all day probably wouldn't be my first choice, but maybe if you're someone that's already carrying lots of books, this edition might not feel like a lot. Do you guys have this notebook? Do you like this notebook? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more fountain pen paper and ink videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much, and until next time.